the president signed into law the OBBB, this multi-trillion-dollar tax cut bill. Within there, they had all kinds of different things for the American people to save money, pay less taxes, things like that. And then for a long time, they also said, yeah, no more taxes on Social Security. And I've come back many, many times in videos and said, false. They did not remove taxation of Social Security benefit. They legally could not do that in this reconciliation bill that was signed into law a year ago. But they continue to say, taxes are stopped on Social Security. No more taxes on Social Security. And I say that is so false. That is not true. They're not telling you the full story. That is not what happened. But instead, what they did is they offered this $6,000 per person for seniors 65 and over of a deduction for 4 years, basically 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. Those 4 years are the years in which seniors 65 and over can take advantage of this $6,000 deduction on your tax return. Remember, a deduction is not a credit. A deduction does not necessarily get you a check cut to you, but rather, as you saw in the screenshot that I had for you, they clearly said right there in the email from Social Security, the average senior across the board was seeing a $7,500 benefit. As in, when I say benefit, I'm not saying like, yeah, here's a deposit, here's a direct deposit, as in your Social Security benefit. That's not the type of benefit I'm talking about. I'm talking about like a $7,500, well, I'm going to say benefit again, so I'm not trying to confuse that, but it's basically like a deduction, right? A benefit worth $7,500 in the event that somebody had deductions, $6,000 plus other deductions available to seniors, totaling up to $7,500. Does that kind of make sense? Right? So again, I just want to make it very clear, not a check cut to us, not a benefit deposited into our bank account, but rather deductions worth a benefit of $7,500. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. Anyway, that's what they're talking about here. So when you read this email and you read this communication, from the start, you're like, wow, $7,500. Wow, that sounds amazing. This is what they're doing for seniors 65 plus. But it can be very misleading at the same time, thinking, wait, they're going to give us $7,500? It's not about giving. It's about getting the deductions worth $7,500, which ultimately reduce the tax liability for individuals receiving Social Security. And that's what that's all about. Big difference. Even though it sounds like we're talking about the same thing, it's not, okay? It's deductions essentially worth that $7,500, as I've described a couple times throughout this video. So anyway, that is what that's all about, okay? And most of that coming out of the $6,000, which was encompassed within the OBBB, again, signed into law by the president last year on the 4th of July, 2025. Here we are a year later, and that's what that mostly comes down to. So if you receive this communication, or if you see other people out there talking about this, Social Security is saying $7,500 per individual, 65 plus. Yeah, it's called in savings, called in deductions, basically reducing somebody's income and basically providing that reduce in tax liability is what that comes down to, and basically other savings at that point totaling up to $7,500 is what that is, okay? Not necessarily money coming to us. And again, I know I've said that a few times in this video, but I want to make it very clear so there's no miscommunication, there's no misunderstanding, like, wait, you said we're getting a $7,500 check, right? No, definitely not saying that, okay? That's why I try to keep explaining this here to make it very, very clear that we're not getting a $7,500 check, but rather this is what they're claiming, okay? Anyway, just want to clarify this for you. As always, when they make announcements like this, when information like this comes out, there's always quite a bit of confusion around this, and there's always, questions and like, hey, what does this mean? What are they talking about? That's what they're talking about. So basically what they're doing, just long story short here, they're basically just patting themselves on the back, acting like, we're the best in the world. We've done everything for everybody, and we're giving tons and tons of money to people. No, false. That's actually not true. Just like no more taxes on Social Security, that's also not true. As I said earlier, they gave a deduction instead, and that's exactly what they're patting themselves on the back for. Again, when it comes down to the deductions that seniors were able to get when they filed their tax return this year in 2026 on the behalf of 2025, that's where that $7,500 basically benefit came from. Does that make sense? Anyway, Drop your comments, your questions, your feedback down below. If you want me to come back in another dedicated video and talk about this further or explain any specific questions or concerns around this, let me know. I can certainly do that.